The German version of this video will be later in this feed. Die deutsche Version von diesem Video kommt später im Feed. Yes, we'll talk about a really thick book. We'll talk about a science fiction, and we'll talk about a novel of ideas by a very, very famous author Neal Stephenson in this video. Hello, my name is Oliver Gassner, and this is a live and uncut video and podcast that will come out just minutes after the video is online. I've come to review some books, and those books that are in English, I'll review in English and in German, so you can hear the German version of this review later. I didn't really write out this review. These are my notes here, and so go along with me. We'll talk about this. Neal Stephenson, Anathem. Well, what does that mean, Anathem? In a way, it's an artificial world, a word, and it's an artificial world. So the novel is not set on Earth. It's not set. Well, it's not really clear if it's set in the Earth future or in some other future. We'll come to that, and it creates a very, very unique world. We have a world in front of us with 6,000 years of history. So the known history of that world goes 6,000 years back, more or less written history with some small exceptions. And we arrive at a kind of science monastery. And those guys are really, really talking weird. We learn about the mathic world, so that's kind of the mint world: mathematics, engineering, information sciences, technology. That's what's called mathic in this world, and we have lots of other linguistic saltos in this book. The book starts with an introduction, and he says you can skip it. The introduction gives you a timeline of the history of that world, and it ends in a list of vocabulary. And I both read the timeline, and I was using the vocabulary intensively till I started to understand more and more. And after a while, you get accustomed to that language. So in the beginning, it was a very, very hard read to get into this world, and our narrator is I think it's a first. Is it a first-person narrator? I think it is. Yeah, it's a first-person narrator, and so we are fully immersed in this world, and get only little explanation. Except for the appendix and the timeline. So he creates these 6,000 years of scientific and philosophical culture, and there's a whole universe, there's a whole world to explore, a little comparable to Lord of the Rings, but not quite as complex linguistically. He's creating some special terms, and he says he takes it from English and French and Greece and so on to emulate the words that exist on this planet. And one of these words is Anathem. Anathema is some well, you could call it an expulsion. So when somebody in a religious context argues in a certain way so that he's a heretic, then you say, yeah, that's anathema. We'll have you cast you out, and the casting out or the exit of those monks from this cloister is one of the central plots of this book. So imagine that all people doing science are locked up in monasteries. They they can have sex, they can marry, they have different types of marriage, but they can't get children. And the only way that people that they multiply is that people from outside come. And some of these monks are locked up for 1 year, some for 10 years, some for 100 years, and some for 1,000 years. So those that are locked up for 1,000 years do not have outside contact for 1,000 years, 100 years, 10 years, 1 year. And you can only move from the 1 year to the 10 year, from the 10 year to the 100 year, and so on. You can't move downwards, but you can be called out of the monastery to solve some technological problem for society, and then you're not allowed back in because you'd contaminate the information inside the monastery. Here they're not really called monasteries, but I'm not trying to confuse you with these words. So we have this language, and then a group of those people, and our hero actually then at some point alone has to venture out into that world and solve problems and travel and survive attacks and so on and so on. And at some point we learn that some disaster of a global scale is threatening the world, and actually those monks have to go into space in order to meet the enemy and defuse the danger that threatens them. I don't want to say a whole lot of more. We have very rich detail. We have nanotext in detail, but the fun thing is, for example, that you have something that's used in the book like till here, and then finally here it's explained how it's roughly actually working. Yeah? For example, those monks have a special attire. They have a robe called bowls, and they have a girdle called a cord, and they have a sphere that is kind of expandable and contractible, and you can sit on it and you can do other things with it. And only very late in the book it's explained how they work, and that's how it is with quite a lot of the technology in here. It's Anathem is also called a novel of ideas because very vast parts of the book are taken up by philosophical discussion between Platonism and idealism and actually quantum theory. And if you throw these three together, you get a very interesting way of traveling through space, of traveling through dimensions, and you get very interesting problems that aliens probably have to face when they travel to another dimension. The whole thing is it actually starts as a kind of medieval setting and ends up as really, really hard sci-fi. And you can actually count on the fact that some esoteric discussions that they have at some point in the book will come up later again, and the ideas laying out there will play a role later in the book. So don't spread the read too far apart, because at some point I took breaks, and I think it took me a whole summer to read this, and at some points I had really problems remembering stuff. But you can also learn really interesting stuff about configuration space and the definition of how you can think of dimensions and so on and so on. So it's really a great read. There's even a website, because he couldn't make footnotes and really credit all the people that gave the idea. So what he's doing actually, he's using, for example, ideas from Earth philosophy and creating some philosopher in this alien world who has similar ideas. And sometimes you recognize the ideas, and sometimes you don't. If you read a whole lot of philosophy, you might recognize everything. But I've only read a lot of philosophy, and I don't recognize everything. And I read the wrong stuff, I think. So Neal Stephenson is a real world builder. I'm currently reading Diamond Age, and I'm close to finishing it. So I hope there's going to be a review of that soon. And so I can really recommend this fascinating read to you. I can only give you the hint. Take a lot of time for reading, and try to read it as fast as you can, so that you can keep all those ideas and those complex things in mind. And if you're not really masochistic, use the timeline in the beginning, and use and look up the keywords again and again and again, because I think there are some words that I looked up 3 or 4 times till I really grasped what they meant, or what person they were referring to, and so on. Because it's really complex what Neal Stephenson is doing here. But all in all, it's a really, really fascinating read. And the final solution is fascinating. And you kind of take part in the start of a new era in this universe that Neal Stephenson is creating. And as we all know, he's a really great universe creator, and a great juggler of many characters and timelines, and so on and so on. So a definite recommendation to read this. I don't know what I paid in Germany. I think I got it. Oh yes, I got it as a gift. The book is rather old, actually. The book is rather old, actually. Here it says it's first paperback hardcover printing was September 2008, so it's 10 years old. And I even got it as a gift from someone. They paid only €7, less than €7, actually. But I got that, like, I don't remember. It should say a date somewhere here. 4th of February 2012. So this book sat here for 6 years before I started to read it, but I should have read it earlier. So now I'm on a Neal Stephenson spree. After this, I'm reading, as I said, Diamond Age. I'm close to the end. It's also different. Then I'm gonna take a little break and read some German crime novel. And after that, it's I'm gonna go for the Baroque trilogy by Neal Stephenson, if nothing else crosses my path. So that's a little preview on the reviews that you're gonna get. May the juice be with you, and live long and prosper. You'll very welcome to give a thumbs up to this, to share it, to comment it both on YouTube or on my blog. I think I'm gonna post the English one to my personal blog at ogok.de, and I'm gonna post the English one there, and the German one to blog.literaturwelt.de. I might do the German version right now or a little later, and then also the podcasts are gonna come out. I guess I'll do the podcast only in German, as far as yeah. If not, if you want a podcast also in English, tell me, but it's gonna confuse the listeners if I have any. Okay, bye-bye. See you later.